Bonjour tout le monde. Journée de budget. Bonjour and hello everyone. It's Leader of the Green Party of Canada, Elizabeth May. I'm very, very happy to be joined by Mike Morrice, former Member of Parliament for Kitchener Centre and future Member of Parliament for Kitchener Centre. But we don't want an election right away. Nous avons lu le budget de 2025. Je suis tellement déçue parce que j'ai mes espoirs pour les choses plus bonnes que ça. Le Premier ministre a dit que les Canadiens doivent faire les sacrifices. Mais dans ce budget, il y a quelqu'un qui gagne et quelqu'un qui perd. And we identified, as we read it, this budget is not about even sacrifices across our country. They're generational sacrifices. My grandchildren lose. This government has decided not even to mention our legally binding Paris targets and has jettisoned most climate programs, including the oil and gas cap. The climate competitiveness strategy, so-called, will create large winners in the corporate sector and create more subsidies for fossil fuels. We cut assistance to the poorest of the poor in the developing world. We do have some good things which we identify in our press release, but let me turn it over to Mike for his comments.
Thank you, Elizabeth. As you heard from Elizabeth, in this budget, there are sacrifices, as the Prime Minister made clear there would be, but those sacrifices are not evenly felt. There are $56 billion in cuts to public services that folks in my community and Canadians across the country rely on. Programs like the Greener Homes program that helps folks to retrofit their homes and save money on their energy bills. Cuts to a dedicated public transit fund. Cuts to planned expansions of pharmacare. What we don't see is the other option of how we could fund generational investments. We don't see new taxes on the billionaire class. We don't see fossil fuel companies who continue to make off like bandits. $30 billion in subsidies they got last year, they're getting a bit more in this budget again. And for that, we are disappointed. We're going to continue to call for more and better.
I want to make it clear that I am specifically asking the Prime Minister to think about the fact that he's not the CEO of a company called Canada. He's the Prime Minister of this country with a minority government. Now is the time to reach out to those of us in opposition parties who could vote for the budget if in negotiations over the next few days we see changes. That's a possibility. It's a real possibility. The vote will be very tight. When we crunch the numbers, it's too close for comfort. And this is the time for a Prime Minister, and I really ask him personally to meet, to sit down and talk and find the changes that could be made to where we could cast our one vote in favor of the budget. But that moment is not now. Ce n'est pas possible pour ce budget actuellement de gagner le vote des Verts. Maintenant, c'est impossible. Mais peut-être avec les négociations, il sera possible. Mais c'est pour le Premier ministre de décider.
Vous avez besoin pour voter pour ce budget?
C'est essentiel d'avoir les programmes qui aident les pauvres, qui aident les personnes dans la classe moyenne pour réduire les coûts d'énergie avec les programmes, comme Mike a dit, les programmes de Greener Homes, c'est le nom en anglais, mais c'est maintenant terminé et mort. Aussi, il n'y a pas les programmes dans le budget pour réduire les coûts d'énergie avec il parle de l'importance d'un projet de significance nationale pour l'électricité Est, Ouest et Sud du Nord, mais ce n'est pas un programme avec une approche claire. So they talk about East-West electricity grid as a good thing, but there's no programming in this budget to make it happen. You have to bring the provinces together. There's nothing in this budget for nature. The entire commitment from Montreal Kunming to 30 by 30 isn't mentioned. So c'est dans le COP 15 à Montréal pour protéger la nature. C'est un grand succès pour le Canada comme hôte avec le gouvernement de Chine. Mais dans ce budget, il n'est mentionné pas du tout. Il n'y a pas une seule mention des poissons ni de saumon. Et pour les droits des Autochtones, il n'y a pas de mention pour les programmes comme les gardiens autochtones pour protéger la nature. We see things that I thought would be in there that aren't. It's a long list. Of good things, the funding for CBC is good to see. It's good to see a program that's going to put money in the hands of municipal governments for local infrastructure. But to eliminate the public transit program for urban areas is really a shock.
Puis juste, vous avez rencontré M. Carney il y a quelques semaines.
Oui.
Est-ce que l'impression que ça vous donne, c'est qu'il ne vous a pas écouté?
Oui, nous n'avons pas une discussion. C'est un peu bizarre quand on pense que la réalité que nous avons rencontrée le 2e octobre, mais au sujet du budget, mais il n'a pas une seule fois demandé à moi qu'est-ce que je veux voir dans le budget pour gagner mon vote. Pas du tout. Nous avons une conversation à un niveau un peu plus haut, les questions pour l'avenir du Canada, mais pas les questions avec les chiffres, avec l'idée que où est la possibilité pour un Canada plus vert et aussi plus riche. Ce n'est pas une conversation que nous avons eue, peut-être maintenant.
Mais est-ce que vous vous inquiétez, on entend que M. Chris d'Entremont, chez les conservateurs, considère de traverser le plancher de la Chambre et joindre les libéraux. Il y aurait d'autres conservateurs qui y songeraient. Est-ce que vous craignez que ce gouvernement-là minoritaire devienne majoritaire et que ça réduise le poids des
J'ai aucune idée qu'il y a les conservateurs qui pensaient de traverser le banquette. Mais Chris d'Entremont est quelqu'un, j'ai beaucoup de respect pour lui parce que dans le gouvernement de Nouvelle-Écosse, il est un membre de le Parti progressif conservateur et il est l'ancien ministre d'Environnement dans la province de Nouvelle-Écosse. Il a fait les bonnes choses pour l'environnement, mais il va joindre les Verts s'il y a les cancers environnementaux, parce que ce budget, c'est plus... je pense que c'est plus proche l'idée de M. Poilievre avec les partis conservatifs que pour les gouvernements libéraux, mais aussi le budget est aussi très proche à un budget que ce n'est pas un grand choc si c'était le budget de M. Poilievre. Il n'y a pas les grands changements il y a les grands changements à l'idée qu'est-ce que c'est le Parti libéral. C'est un parti tout à fait différent avec les subventions pour l'énergie fossile plus grand et en même temps pour réduire les programmes pour protéger le climat.
I need Chris d'Entremont in the English succinctly, if you would, please.
What, beg your pardon?
What you were just saying in French, we need that succinctly on Chris d'Entremont.
Succinctly, Chris d'Entremont served the Nova Scotia government as a progressive conservative. He was Minister of Environment in Nova Scotia and made some very good decisions. I have a lot of respect for him. I'd like him to join the Green Party if he's going to cross the floor.
As it stands right now, would you vote no on the budget?
Absolutely. There's no way that we can, as Greens, vote yes on this budget. But I want to emphasize there are several days in which this budget can be negotiated and amended before it goes to a vote. And that's something that doesn't get discussed much. I am surprised that Mr. Carney has not reached out, or that more of his ministers haven't reached out to say, what would it take to get Greens to vote for this budget? In the same way I hear from friends in the New Democratic Party, they haven't felt that there's been an effort to get us on side early on. So we are now in a position where I think every vote's going to matter, every vote's going to count, and I would invite the Prime Minister, and I've sent this message through the officials who were with us in the lockup, please let them know I'd like to talk, because there's some things that could be done that would make it possible for us to vote for this budget. Nous sommes en groupe avec mon cabinet fantôme, avec Mike, puis aussi avec la critique finance, la critique pour les petites entreprises. Nous sommes ensemble avec les mêmes réactions. C'est pas possible. I kept going back and saying, are you sure? Maybe I can vote for it. What do you think? We kept going back over it, reading sections and saying, c'est pas possible de voter en faveur de ce budget, actuellement. Mais avec les changements, peut-être.
He did have that meeting with you on October 2nd.
Yes.
But you're saying that didn't feel like a serious attempt at figuring out what you want to see in the budget?
Well, he never asked. And he didn't say, would you vote for our budget if it had these things in it? And I did suggest things that would make a real difference to Greens, to see us, for instance, go after wealth tax, to see an increase in government revenues. I mean, the deficit's quite large. For us, that's not a red line issue. You have to invest. There's investments here, for instance, in high-speed rail. These are good. but there's not enough investment in a greener Canada. There's a very large deficit, and we pointed him to ways that you could increase the available revenue, ideas that we'd already had costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office, not included, but the deep cuts in public services, deep cuts that will be felt in pain for years. And a lot of the time, the language in this budget is very management consultant language. We're going to modernize this and recalibrate that. And you start reading it and thinking, okay, so that's getting cut, that's gone. It's not a budget we can vote for. I know I'm talking too much, Mike. Do you want to throw in some more thoughts?
I think, Matthew, to your question, by the time the Prime Minister reached out to Elizabeth, he'd already made clear it was an austerity budget full of sacrifices. And then when we read it today, it was clear that who those sacrifices were for and who they weren't for. We were clear in calling out the need for wealth tax in this country. Instead, we see $56 billion of cuts to public services that folks in our communities rely on. And I think that leads to the conclusion that Elizabeth shared.
And I was also shocked to see cuts in one of the things I stressed to the Prime Minister was with Donald Trump withdrawing from the world and the U.S. withdrawing and killing the USAID program. In a time when the world is in turmoil, I believe the world needs more Canada. I think we should step up and do more in peacekeeping and more in helping for world health issues where the U.S. government's decision-making is going to cause an increase in HIV/AIDS, an increase in polio, an increase in deaths from malaria. We could stand up and start filling that space, and instead we're retreating. We're putting less money into overseas development assistance and more money into our military, which we support up to a point. But this is the question of why would we throw, in the same week that the Prime Minister said we were going to have to make sacrifices, they announced a $2 billion gift to the Darlington project, which they've already put on the fast-track C5 list. You need to know that that project, while owned by OPG, the companies that will benefit are General Electric and Hitachi and Kiewit Engineering from the United States and some Canadian engineering, of course, our old friends Atkins Realis, formerly known as SNC-Lavalin, and Aiken. But this is for a project that may never generate a single kilowatt of electricity because it's an experimental prototype that we don't have a single operating small modular reactor anywhere in any democracy in the world generating electricity. And yet to casually throw $2 billion to it when they've just said Canadians will have to sacrifice? Why do young Canadians have to sacrifice, and why does the next generation have to bear the brunt of our government today deciding in 2025 that our oil and gas cap is off, that we're not even going to mention that we're legally bound under the Paris Agreement to reduce emissions? It's not even mentioned in this budget.
What do you think of the Liberals actively courting Conservatives to cross the aisle?
Well, they don't have enough votes.
Sorry, just to jump on that, considering that they're doing that to cross the aisle and everything you've described about their approach to negotiations, I'll put in air quotes, do you have any confidence that Prime Minister Carney and the Liberals have any interest in negotiating with any of the other parties if they don't have the votes, that they're willing to take it or leave it and sort of walk away if you
Well, I think put that question to Prime Minister Carney and to Finance Minister Champagne. We try to be constructive as Greens. We don't want to take partisan shots. That's why you can tell how I'm speaking about Chris D'Entremont. Most of the people in that House are friends of mine. I don't agree with many of them on policy choices, but we're open to having a conversation. It's too important to stick to our legally binding commitments than just to say, oh, okay, it became inconvenient to have a home energy retrofit program that worked extremely well, so well that it was oversubscribed. It's really effective in reducing greenhouse gases, putting people to work in installing the insulation and the things that you do that save money and make sense and reduce carbon are abundant. It's still the low-hanging fruit. And we're trampling over the low-hanging fruit to chase pipe dreams of new technologies that are super expensive and take a very long time to produce nothing. C'est tout. Merci.